Hello, and welcome to another episode of Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. And this afternoon, I am so thrilled to have Dean Anderson with us on the podcast. I met Dean at a coach's workshop, a life coach's workshop, I believe over about a year and a half ago. And I loved the course, loved what I took, loved our instructor, and ended up connecting with a number of people who were at that workshop as well. So I have followed some of Dean's journey, and I have loved what he stands for and what he shares. So I really wanted, sorry, mechanical issues. It's all good. I know. So I really wanted to interview him on the call today. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro to Dean. He is born and raised in London, and he's a proud father of 4. Dean currently works with passion as an addiction recovery specialist, relapse prevention counselor, addiction awareness advocate, and public speaker. He is extremely humble, and he openly shares his own experiences in dealing with addictions in the hopes of helping others to overcome their own struggles. His chosen profession is only one of the many ways he gives back to the community. Dean is also president and creator of the Webinars for Life. I'll have that information in the notes as well. A free online relapse prevention program. If you'd like to learn more about him, you'll be able to connect with him at www.deananderson.ca. So that is a lot of information to get started, and I am so thrilled to have you with us today, Dean. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you can start. Why don't we just start and you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Myself right now, like I said, like in the intro, it was so wonderfully put. I am an addiction counselor, and I work one-on-one with people who are struggling with substance abuse. And I also work with people and their families, and talking about what it's like to make that journey and understand what it is that the people that they love are going through. And throughout that process, I've come to realize that one of the gaps that we have in addiction recovery is long-term relapse prevention, educational relapse prevention. It's offered through some services if you go into residential rehab and that sort of thing. But if not, most government-provided services give you like a 10-week program, and then you're sent on your own. When this is the kind of thing that needs to be touched on and learned throughout life and over again, as you nod your head, you understand how important it is, right? So I came to the realization that there's something out there that's big and missing in that point. So a huge part of the last few months of my life have been face deep in a laptop and developing webinars, which is Webinars for Life, for relapse prevention, so people can access that service from anywhere. It doesn't matter where they are. If they have barriers because of mental illness or anxiety or depression, or barriers because of distance, or there's a lot of cultural barriers that people have, because the only lifelong true support system out there right now for people in addiction recovery, other than a one-on-one counselor, is a 12-step process. And a lot of people have spiritual barriers or concerns or minority barriers that have that stand in their way of getting that lifelong recovery process underway. So that's what I do. I spend most of my time learning, reading, educating myself, dealing with people in relapse prevention, and then trying to live my own life.
Yeah, exactly. You said that. I mean, I think something that obviously drew me to you from the beginning was just how real and open you were about you sharing your life, your story, and what you wanted to do with it. Not just, this is what happened to me. It's what did you want to do with it and how you wanted to impact others. And I think what you've done is that you have found some, I hate to say loopholes, but loopholes of things that were not available, that weren't being addressed. And I think that it is definitely something that has to be addressed. When we were in our early stages, when my husband and I were trying to figure out how to handle what we were dealing with our kids at the time, we tried a number of different programs and counselors and Al-Anon, and all of it's great. I'm not being negative about any of it, but we didn't find, everything we found was about many people who were going back and dealing with circumstances in their life, dealing with a mother who had been alcoholic or a parent, and they had dealt with, they were in the process of dealing with things that had happened, 20, 30 years ago. Not that I say that with no judgment at all. My husband looked at me and he goes, is there anything in present tense? Like, can we find anyone who can give us some support for right now and what we're going through?
Mhm.
So, we did see some definite holes in the system. And I believe that when you're dealing with any kind of substance abuse of any kind, it impacts every single person in the family. And that the fact that you speak with, and also not just the person dealing with the addiction, but dealing with the families, I mean, it's paramount. It's incredibly important.
Absolutely. If you look at the statistics, most of the people, you've just said it yourself, most of the people that are there are dealing in Al-Anon are dealing with a parent from the past, right?
Yep.
It's cyclical, and it just keeps passing itself down and down and down. Even people who find their way into recovery still have those same behaviors and the same maladaptive coping, or they've used a different way to do it if they're not learning to change. And they still pass these traits and these characteristics onto their children, and it just goes on and on and on. And you hear about people, well, my dad was sober for 20 years, but I still have problems with it because, dad was sober for 20 years, but he just didn't use for 20 years. He didn't actually make strides and change towards being a different or better person or whatever. I don't want to define better, but a healthier person in the sense of communication and love and compassion and family issues and that sort of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. I love that. So you are definitely, you're coming into those parts of your life and what you're creating now. And what excites you the most about it? Like what keeps you going? What keeps you driven forward with what you're doing?
The realistic truth is every time that I'm able to help somebody, I'm potentially saving a life. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to understate it or sound, in any way overdrawn by it, but my personal journey, as I've shared with you before, my personal journey was I did 6 years of sobriety myself. And in that 6 years time, I didn't do anything other than not use or drink. But I still had those maladaptive coping mechanisms. I was back and forth to the doctor, seeing a psychiatrist. Here's your anxiety medication. Here's your depression medication. I became a workaholic and put all my time into external things, trying to get money. And I bought the fancy BMW, and I got the big TV, and I got all the stuff, right? The stuff. But meanwhile, there's this big gaping hole inside of me that gave me nothing, no fulfillment in life. Meanwhile, I have beautiful kids. I got a beautiful wife, everything going for me, money in the bank. I should be happy as happy can be, but on my way home every day, I want to drive into the bridge on the highway, and why? Because I wasn't fulfilling myself from the inside. I wasn't taking care of that addiction and that problem that I had inside of me. So now when I work, my focus is the old me. Mm-hmm. My focus is to have a conversation with the guy that I was 10 years ago and say to that guy, hey, dummy, guess what? There's more to it here. Like, you've got this wonderful thing here. If you start working on yourself instead of spending all your time on the focus of what everybody else thinks, or that the neighbors look over and say, what a nice car Dean's got. He's doing good for himself. Meanwhile, he's this big gaping hole inside of him, right? If I can get through to even one of those people, on any sort of regular, just one in general, right? But one at any sort of regular basis that they go, hey, I've seen something, there's something different here, then that's my passion. That's my reason to get out of my bed, every day, right? So that's what drives me. Just know, and like you said it yourself, it's not just that person.
Oh God, no.
My kids, my family, the people, when I look back, and I have to go through and making amends and making reparations for the damage that I caused in the process of my addiction, it's endless. Like, I mean, everyone in my life was affected. My old coworkers, my old boss, the attitudes that I had, my neighbors, everyone was affected in some way, shape, or form. So you talk about dropping a pebble in a pond and making a little ripple. I mean, try tossing a boulder in there and then trying to clean up that mess. If we can stop those ripples and let people, get to the point of understanding that's a lifelong process of healing and understanding and seeing how to change, then we can start breaking down some of these barriers and maybe break this pattern in some cases, right?
Oh, I just absolutely love how you said that. And I want to touch a little bit how you said that, we can work on one area of our life, but we leave a hole. And then sometimes we find something over here to shove in that hole. And if we do that, no one's going to see the hole. No one's going to see that this is over here. No one's going to know about it. And I just keep shoving more. And eventually I've got to borrow from here to fill the hole, and then from here to fill the hole. And I'm filling it from all aspects of my life, but I'm losing myself in the process, like losing. And I mean, are you kidding? I was a pro at filling that hole.
And it's all temporary.
Oh, it's all temporary.
Yeah.
And you were left feeling very empty, very, not fulfilled, as you said, and drained, like absolutely drained, because as I transparently say,
I'm sorry, my ringer's on.
It's okay. No worries. This is all real.
We're gonna turn this off right now.
Good idea. Is that I say for a long time, I mean, hiding from the world and pretending everything was perfect took tremendous amount of energy that I had to borrow from every aspect of my life. Mm-hmm. And that meant like nothing was fixed. So there was nothing hiding. And in fact, it's just kind of chipping away at yourself over and over and over, because you're not dealing with the issue. And that's
absolutely,
that's the tough part, is you got to dig in and deal with it.
From the outside looking in, it was this sense of, I'm doing everything else that I should be doing, but I'm still not content. What's wrong with me? Was the thought, was the idea to think I still have this hole, but I got the job and I got the things and I got all the stuff and I'm doing the things that society says I should be doing. And from the outside looking in, buying stuff and, career and success,
whatever that is,
was the idea. And it's like, oh, I'm successful. I'm doing good. Why am I not happy? So maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with the inside of me, but then you can't see it. And everywhere I go, there I am. So for me not to be able to see it must mean I'm a moron, because I'm with myself all the time. So then all of a sudden the whole thing starts spinning down the wrong path, because and self-loathing and all that other weird stuff kicks in, right?
See, that spiral, there are definitely people that resonated with right now, that spiral that you just described, because we subscribe to what success is. We listen to what other people value as success. And sometimes we actually really don't even have a clue what we want or what would make us happy, because we're too busy following everyone else's idea of what success is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true.
Yeah. So obviously you just said, so your life was not always where you are now.
Nope.
Right? Nope. And so you've gone through a number of different challenges. Where would you say was a major turning point in your life?
Well, it would have been my addiction relapse back into addiction. Like I said earlier, I had 6 years of sobriety and it was miserable. Well, one day I, through complacency and not understanding that, 6 years of sobriety and not working on it, didn't see addiction as a problem. It was just I was sober. So one day I picked up a drink. Me and my ex-wife were on holiday and we said, you know what, I'm just going to have one. It won't be a big deal. Shortly there and after, it was full-blown addiction, right back at it again. What I thought was about a year and a half, I said to my buddy one time, I said, you know what, it's been about a year and a half and I can't believe that all these things have gone wrong. And he said, dude, it's been 3 years. So
wow.
that was, just a snapshot of how quickly these things can, and you don't even realize what's happening, because there's just this blur of change. And then the idea of coping with the idea of okay, you have success, then all of a sudden now you're in failure, and you weren't happy in success. So now how happy are you in failure? Well, you're filled with guilt and shame and remorse, and it just whirlwinds. And then there's just this blur of substance use and waking and guilt and shame, and then trying to mask it again with more substance use. So the turning point was the fact of, after 3 years of substance use, I ended up in the hospital from overuse. I wouldn't call it an overdose, but overusage. And then when I came home in the morning, my wife was gone with a note saying we're gone, and they had left. And then I got politely asked to resign from my place of employment in the same day.
Oh, wow.
And so it was this whirlwind of stuff, all kind of happened all at the same time. And that was probably the lowest point in my entire life. Mm-hmm. With that said, it was also the turning point in my life. There was no, you hear people talking about addiction recovery where all of a sudden the sky opens up and this white light comes down, and it was nothing like that. It was misery. It was despair. It was darkness. And there wasn't a change in that profound moment. I never had one of those epiphanies, those changes. But when I look back, I can see the points where I had hit lows or hit highs or seen different changes in my thinking patterns and what was happening in my life. And then I realized that it's a whole, and that's where my growth comes from, is because I realized that it's a whole bunch of little things that I'm probably not going to see till later in life when I look back. So stop trying to look for them right now in the moment, because I'm probably not going to see it, right? Whereas before, you're always looking for these little epiphanies or these little miracles that happen in the moment, right?
Yes.
When it happens on TV, come on, it's got to happen to me.
It's a light bulb, a lightning bolt. It's crystal clear.
Right? Yeah. So anyways, it took me about 8 months before I got into treatment, and then I started making changes in my life. And within that short period of time, the things that I spoke about to you at the beginning of this interview was about not realizing that it was all the little things that I had to do for me that filled me from the inside, that I learned how to cope and manage stress and do all these things and be mindful and be in the moment, have a little bit of spirituality in my life or whatever that looks like. Understanding that process was my epiphany. It was like, hey, wait a minute. I was fine all along. There was nothing wrong with me before. It was just my skewed way of thinking and looking at the world. When I was able to change that skewed way in thinking of looking at the world, well, of course, I saw the world differently. And then my life changed abundantly and profoundly. So that, looking back at all those little events that had happened throughout that time, were what changed me ultimately.
That's powerful. That is really, really powerful. And I actually did another podcast earlier today, and the one thing that the speaker had said was that, when we can change the lens that we look at life through, we can really change, our entire perception and how we deal with it. So, it might look one way, but you add a different lens to it and you're like, oh, okay, I get this now. And it's just depth. You've added depth and perception or perspective to it. And you can see it now. And most of life, I can't think of who says that quote, but life only makes sense in reverse. We can look at it in reverse. We don't live it in reverse, but we can look at it in reverse and go, okay, I get that now. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And those moments, they never are there of clarity in that moment in the present tense. It's when you look at it after and go, I get it. Okay, I get it. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. And I find joy in that. I find joy in waiting for that to make itself clear. So even in the sense of something horrible happens, I think in the perspective sense, I have to think, okay, this bad thing has probably happened for a reason and sent me down a path that I'm not expecting to go down, but I'm excited to see why. And then sure enough, 6 months down the road, you look back and you go, oh, that's why that didn't work, right? So even Webinars for Life, my doing that. I had an opportunity to have a different, to take a different process with my career a while back, and then things didn't go through. And I was like, oh man, that didn't happen. And then I'm looking at it going, oh, I get it, right? So I didn't have to be grumpy for those couple of days that I was.
No, you didn't. And you actually were being directed. Sometimes we're being directed to something that is much more in line with us, in line with who we are, and is because we're here to make an impact. I really do believe we're here to step into roles to make an impact for other people. And sometimes that fork in the road is to direct you, right? Not reject you, but to direct you to the right.
Sometimes it's got to be really abrupt. That fork in the road, that turn, sometimes it's just a big kick in the butt, right?
Sometimes it's a door in the face.
Yeah. It's like getting derailed off the train just so you can find the right track, right?
I absolutely love that. That's a good analogy. I like that. So you've got some really great nuggets there and moments of clarity and moments of what you learned through your process and fulfillment. This is, again, we're having a conversation here. Do you believe that lack of personal fulfillment is a trigger issue, cause effect, contributing factor to a number of people dealing with addictions? I just threw that out there. I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I do, I don't know if are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if maybe not your listeners, but if they can look at that, but it's a pyramid that says self-actualizations at the top, and at the very bottom of this pyramid are your basic needs. And then in the middle, everything falls into the middle of what's more important, and it kind of tiers up. So self-fulfillment is there, but what I'm finding, and I'm seeing now more nowadays, is people are being raised to understand that fulfillment means stuff. It means belonging. It means things. It means this. And we've kind of taken it up this level where my personal needs used to be food and shelter and caveman days. If I didn't get my personal needs, I could never be happy, da, da, da. And now we've taken it and we've amplified it so that if I don't have the newest phone, that's just as traumatic as me not having a place to live.
It's so true, though.
It absolutely is true. And that's the consumerism that we live in, and that's the society that we live in, that I'll never be successful because I'm pumped constantly day and night through social media and through TV and my cell phone telling me that I'm not good enough and I'm not special enough and I need to have this thing in order to be special enough and all this stuff. And then when we don't learn how to cope or how to understand or think that we'll never be in that spot, the only way we can find to be in the moment, which is the best way to be and be content with what we have, is to get high or to get drunk, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this is the society that we're pushing, and then we're seeing addiction rates go up through the roof, and not even in the sense of substance use, but our cell phones now are like little slot machines. They ding, they whistle, they bell, they do the same thing, and people are getting addicted to their devices because that's the only way that they can cope or deal with the outside world. Because I sure as heck don't want to look at my life, because if I sit down and look at my life, as far as the TV is concerned or the Facebook is concerned, I'm lacking in a whole bunch of ways.
Yes. If you wanted to live up to that, like if you're using that guideline and that standard, yeah, and you can see how, again, some teens can fall into that, because you can look back in reflection now as an adult, and say, that those things don't necessarily matter. Now that you can look at it with some, experience and age, but you can see how some teens are wrapped up in, I don't have this, or I'm not as good as this, or compared to, the world, social media pictures. And you see, especially like young girls, I'm working with a young girl right now, and it's crazy because the standards of what they're measuring themselves up to, well, first off, it's not even real. Like, they're not even real anyways. Like, they're doctored, fixed and shaved this and hair, tone, color, everything's different. So it's not real. So we're comparing ourselves to a standard that's not even real. Mm-hmm. So we're never going to reach it. Like, we just can't, because it's not real.
We are even when I grew up in, and I'm to date myself, but in public school in the 70s, it was, you were based on, you lived your life on this cognitive horizon of looking at happiness as in the future. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I get the thing. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when, and this is what you're taught, you had to set these goals that were really far out, and you'll be happy when you get these things, when you get the pretty wife, and that's what I did. I got all these things, right? But it's always on this cognitive horizon. I'll be and then we get this stuff and you're happy with it for only a moment. And then you go, okay, now what? And we're constantly living on this cognitive horizon of I'll be happy when. But then we set these goals outside of the realm of possibility.
Right.
And then we're constantly disappointed because our expectations are set way too high or the expectations are unreasonable. And then they're unachievable. So I might as well not even try.
Right.
And then when I don't even try, I must be a failure. I must be garbage. There must be something wrong with me. Other people are doing it. I see them on social media. I can't even sit in my own head. And this is what I see with addiction, is people can't sit in their own thoughts long enough. And if I sit in my own thoughts too long, I need to numb those thoughts. And the best way to do that, or easiest way to do that, is instantaneously, not through exercise, not through eating, not through things that might take a few minutes, but through smoking something that takes 8 seconds to break my blood-brain barrier. Yeah, right?
It is. Yep. It's the numb. I do believe that whether it is drugs, alcohol you're choosing, or other forms of addictions, phone, right? There's whatever that is, we have become, we've learned to cope. And I say we, general and population, that times that we numb out, like it's numbing out TV. I say like hours of TV.
Right. Binging Netflix, yeah.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with watching TV, because people are going to go, oh my gosh, she said I can't watch TV. That's not what I said. No. But it's the whole numbing out. And if you have to numb out day in, day out, because you're that unhappy in your marriage, or you're that unhappy in your life, you're that unhappy in your job, you're not fixing anything. You're not fixing, you're staying in that same space.
Totally. I totally agree. And it's become so second nature that it's the norm. It's the norm now. And it's like anything, it's about balance. It's about finding, a little bit's okay, a little bit, like you said, it's not that it's all bad for you.
No.
You're going to eat a Big Mac. You're going to watch TV. You're going to do these things. You're going to have a beer. I mean, if you don't have a problem, have a beer, right? Or have salmon once in a while, whatever, whatever. But it's about balance. Yeah, it's not about, and people say, to me on a regular basis, well, when is it a problem, right? And it's a problem when you're using it to not be yourself, or you have an obsession with it where you can't get through a regular day, or you start changing your lifestyle or affecting the people around you in order to get more of it. So if you're neglecting your entire life to sit and watch Netflix for a long period of time and you're doing it extensively, then yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. I actually love how you just said that. And I've been asked that question many times. How do you know when, and from parents and from how do you know when it's an addiction? Well, it's impossible because you can't get addicted to pot. Let's just open that can of worms right now. Because I like to push the, status quo and kind of, rock the boat. But many people will say that's impossible. They can't get addicted to pot. And I'm like, anything that you need to use on a daily basis to function. And I'm going to say function is a very loose term, function.
Yeah. Right? What defines function?
Yeah, exactly. But if it's interfering with all aspects of your life, whether that's school, job, family, like paying your house, like whatever it is, if it interferes with your daily activities, but you can't go for a day without using it because that's how you function, that's a problem. And I don't care what drug that is. I don't care what it
doesn't matter if it's online shopping.
Nope, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Spending. I know people who have struggled with, online shopping and spending like thousands and thousands more than they have. So that to me, it's all is in the same can of worms.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So now you've made some big changes in your life. You're doing some amazing things with your gift is what I would call it. How do you see the world differently now?
Well, the world, compared to 70 years ago, it's a completely different beast. The world now is it's a series of moments, opposed to before was this monster of a past and this unforeseeable a mountain of a future was what it was, right? And now it's become just this whole bunch of tiny little moments that all string together and just kind of doing your best in what you can in that moment. And like I said before, and then I look back and I go, hey, look, I got a whole bunch of strung together moments here and I'm doing all right with it. And, just trying to do right now my life consists of doing the next right thing. And it sounds easier than you would think, but doing the next right thing is saying, okay, every time I'm faced with a decision or having to do something, even if it's just cleaning up the dog poop outside, it's a decision I have to do. And I go, is this the right thing? And I go, okay, yeah, it's the right thing because I'll regret it. But it's a series of trying to do the next right thing. And if I don't do the right thing, being looking at and saying, why did I do it? Yeah. What's my part of it, and why, and how can I make it better next time so that I don't do that thing again? And then now I look back and I see, years of saying, you know what, I have a whole consecutive bunch of right things to do, and I'm okay with me, and I like me, and I love me, and I do the right things. So that makes me lovable for myself. And I'll tell you, when I have love and affection for myself, I have an abundant amount of it to give to other people.
Well, now that
changes
a gold mine. That's a gold mine that you said. Yeah. That's a massive nugget there. And every single thing you want in your life comes from your relationship with yourself first. It does.
Without a doubt. And that's probably the hardest thing that you can get people to understand in any way, shape, or form is that, you know what, you need to take care of you. You need to love you first. And I see it all over the internet, and I see it on memes, and I see it in these self-care, and I see coaches, and I see these wonderful people trying to help people change their lives, but people can't get past the idea of loving themselves first and say, no, my kids come first. No, you got to come first so your kids can come first. You have to come first so that your job can come second. And whatever it is that you're passionate about, you have to come first so that you can be the best that you can be to be passionate about what it is that you're doing and be the best at it, right? Mm-hmm.
You cannot give if that well is empty. You cannot give to anyone else if there's nothing there. And I'll tell you, the one that was powerful for me was, and it doesn't matter what it is, it really doesn't, is that you can only forgive to the capacity that you can forgive yourself.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because that is the most true thing. And that's probably the second most difficult thing that it is to get through to people, that, you know what, if you don't learn how to forgive others, you'll never learn how to forgive yourself. And if you can't forgive yourself, you're going to live in shame and self-loathing, and self-love will never come.
No, isn't it? It's so, I've used that one for a long time. You know, I've worked on forgiveness and
Mhm.
all of those things. And it was that, you know what, the limit, the amount that I will be able to forgive someone else is going to come from how I can forgive myself. And, you know, I mean, as a parent, who isn't going to make mistakes as a parent? Seriously, there's no manual. We do the best that we can. But I know that there were many times that, I wish I would have done something different. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done this.
The tyranny of would and could and should.
Terrible words. Absolutely terrible, mind-boggling words. And when I learned that, you know what, if I can say that I forgive other people, but if I still hold like anchors and resentment towards myself for mistakes that I feel that I made in the journey, then I'm actually not truly forgiving somebody else, because I am the limit of the capacity that I'm going to be able to forgive somebody else. And I also think that, you know, there's this whole thought process that, you know, we want our kids to learn. We want them to learn from their mistakes, but we don't need to hold them over their heads as in like, you are bad and this is what you've done and this is wrong. And that was, you know, letting go and forgiving of that saying that, you know what, it's okay if, you know, you've made mistakes to get yourself to this place. It's okay. Mm-hmm. But when you recognize and own all of your choices that brought you to this point in your life, when you own them, you realize that you actually do have a responsibility in what has got you to this point. Don't look at it with like regret and anger and frustration. Look at it and go, yeah, I did that. But then that means that you can actually take ownership for making different choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely agree. I love, I'll talk with clients and they'll talk about how they have resentments and they'll talk about their, how they can't forgive and da, da, da. And then this is the look at me. This is the look on their face. When I say to them, so you have trouble forgiving yourself when you make mistakes, huh?
Yeah.
That's the look that I get. And I go,
yeah. Well, that's why I think I have no doubt you're a phenomenal coach, because you have to be able to call people on it. You have to be able to call. That's why people are coming to you to like, just have me feel good. I just want to feel good. Yeah. I want people to be able to take those skills and use them in their life and catch themselves when they do things like that, because that's where lifelong change comes from. I don't need to feel good right now. I need to be able to know how to make that feeling last for longer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And learning from those mistakes as they happen.
Oh, and I did a whole talk about this last week, because I think that we are, you know, I do get asked this. I can't even tell you how often I get asked this. How do you make someone make a different decision? How do you change them? I'm like, you don't. I can't even tell you. I can't. I get it so often from parents.
I get it.
Yeah, I can't. You don't. And they're like, what do you mean you don't? I'm like, you don't. You actually don't. You don't change them. You're not here to change people. You are here to be the best version of you that you can be, to encourage people so that they can change their life or do whatever they want to do with their life at the same time. But you know what? We are a collection of all of the mistakes that we've made, of all of the, I hate the word failure, because failure to me is not it's not a bad thing. It doesn't need to be whatever we call it. Whatever we call failure.
Well, failure's got a negative stigma to it, but it just is. It just is.
Yeah, it just is. And so when we put so much emphasis and energy on those words, then it's like there's something wrong. But you know what? We are a collection of everything that we've learned through all of our years. So I can't love myself and hate all of the things I did wrong. I can't do both.
No. What's that saying? I'm not sure. I think it's like an old Zen saying, but it's the difference between the master and the student is the master's failed more times.
Yep.
Yeah.
They've just failed more times, and they've just allowed themselves to fail more times, and probably didn't put a lot of emphasis on it as a failure.
No, it's like, okay, what can I get from that? How can I do it better? How can I move on?
Yeah.
Right. How can I not make that mistake again?
Yeah. And when you do make mistakes more often and you continue to make the same mistake over and over, I do believe it's not a mistake then. I believe it's a choice. It's a choice.
And that's Einstein's definition of insanity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I mean, I've said it to myself. I'm like, Marsha, you've been in this position before. It's not a mistake anymore. You chose this. Like, you need to choose something differently. If you want something, don't do it with resentment. I don't do it with, it's just like, okay, so you're here because you put yourself here. What do you want to do with this? And taking that and changing it. So.
A very, very common saying in the addiction circles is nothing changes if nothing changes.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, that must be I can't even imagine your role in the role that you're playing. So I'm gonna ask you again, putting you on the spot, what would be some of the advice you talk about, putting your hat on and taking care of yourself. If you're dealing with parents who are dealing with substance abuse issues, addiction issues with their kids, what would be some of your advice for them?
Well, you already said it. You've said it all. It's you need to learn to take care of you and be the best person that you can be. Mm-hmm. And that's all you can do. And they're going to learn from your examples, and they're going to learn how to understand what a healthy lifestyle is. You need to, I get that same look when I said, like, people can't forgive themselves. When I tell people and parents that, how are you going to start building your life up? And they go, what's my life got to do with it? Well, guess what? You're going through stress. You're going through a hard time. You're dealing with some difficult stuff right now. What are you doing to deal with that? How are you communicating your feelings and your emotions and the things that are happening with this person or this loved one that's happening right now? What are all the things that you're doing for your own self-care? How are you protecting the rest of your family? How are you, doing all these things that you have to do? And they go, well, I'm not really. I'm focusing on trying to change this person. Guess what? That's not happening, is it?
No.
Yeah. So that's always a surprise to people. But the advice I always give is, take care of yourself first, and then try to find out where those boundaries are. And the hardest thing and the most difficult question for everyone, and you totally understand this, is what's the difference between helping and enabling? What's the difference between just being loving and being being detached, or being cold and callous? And those are probably some of the hardest conversations that are had. And the advice normally is to take them as they come and do them as best you can, but learning how to make proper assertive decisions and communications in that moment that's in the best interest of everyone is a skill that you need to learn, or to make those things going forward and set proper goals or whatever it is that you might have to do for your family.
Extremely powerful what you just said. Very powerful, because two things. Most people don't understand what enabling is, and you can enable in a very innocent way just because you're trying to help, fix, love, etc. And there's a lot of judgment around enabling. I can't even tell you how many times I've been, well, you enabled this, or you did this, you did this. Okay, well, it's not a fault thing. It's a process to get to different levels. And again, there was no manual. There's always learning as we go. We're always learning. But enabling is it's a really tricky point. But I tell you, when I hit points of understanding what my boundaries were and what I wanted to live by, enabling became clearer. It didn't mean it was easy to deal with.
No.
Those are two different things. It was not easy to deal with. It was, some of the toughest things that I have, that I've seen. But I do want to clarify that, for anybody who's listening, enabling is not something that you just see in context of dealing with substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, addictions of any kind. Enabling is in a number of different ways. I have people who have come across and who have reached out to connect, who are enabling a 30-year-old child who is, there's not a substance abuse issue. It's not tied to that, but they're enabling in a number of different ways. And I'm like, you're still not doing them a service. Like, you're not doing them a service. We want our kids to be good functioning adults, whatever that you want, just a functioning adult in society who can contribute and impact in society. So somewhere that line, that like enabling is a trigger word for a lot of people because they don't understand how that can impact what you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the issue of enabling and codependency has become quite dramatic, and especially as our kids are staying home and living longer at home because of the fact that, we're living longer lives or whatever it is that society's doing. Kids are staying home for longer. They're not moving out at 16 and getting married like they did back in the 1900s. So it's a completely different thing now. So people are becoming more attached to having their kids stay at home. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm just going to keep them here a little while, my baby, a little while longer, right?
Not a baby anymore.
And they become more attached, and their addiction is another person,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's
Or
that,
the need to be needed, right?
powerful. The need to be needed is definitely something that I think that a lot of people can relate to, as a parent when they're little and you're taking care of them. And for some people, they do want to be needed, and there's no judgment in that. That's just the way that some people are wired. And that can then affect, again, many generations of how it's just, that independence isn't there. It's not something that we want for them and trying to create. So I just think that enabling is, I think you hit that on the head, is that is, was a word. It was a word I took a while for me to learn and understand. And you also touched on codependent. And again, codependency is not just related to addictions and substance abuse by any means. It is Melody Beattie's books on codependency really started to help me to understand that I was truly codependent to what was happening in here and in our home, because my life and how I lived it reacted according to what was going on in our house. Like, how did, where's the shoe dropping? We completely lost our life. Like, I'm not even exaggerating that at all. Like, when my husband and I completely lost our life, it's taken us years to rebuild, to get to where we are. And so that was because we were very codependent. And they were minors. I get it. But it's certainly, codependency is something that, again, affects a lot of parents as well.
And it's that same, the hole we talked about, that missing piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that same thing when we're talking about, but it's filling it with another. For those who don't understand codependency, it's kind of like that, where you're filling that hole, but you're filling it with another person. Mm-hmm. Instead of a thing or an object or a drug, you're filling it with another person. So then for you to function, you're codependent with somebody else. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like Marcia said, it's not just drugs or alcohol. It's an addiction to another person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of reading in there, and there's a lot of learning that I've done, and very, very, very powerful stuff. So I think that it's great. What message could you give to someone that you would like to share with them who is in the depths of struggling and in the depths of, whether it's a person themselves or family? What kind of message rings through to you that you would like to give and pay forward to somebody who is in a really deep struggling position?
Stop waiting for the sky to open up and a white light to come down and tell you that you're people wait for this fictitious rock bottom, and it's not fictitious, but it's a rock bottom because something changed, right? So it's obviously rock bottom because you stopped digging. I mean, let's be honest here, right? Mm-hmm. And people think that the rock bottom means that I'm going to have this turning point, this thing that just snaps, and all of a sudden my brain says, okay, that's it, I'm done. It's the camel's back, right? But it doesn't always happen that way for people. And then what happens is as people start going deeper and deeper down the hole, they start saying, okay, something else is going to happen. And then something bad happens and they don't quit. And they go, oh, that must have not been the rock bottom. I'll just keep going until I find it. And the problem is that it's death for some people. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way it ends. You get some guy living under a bridge and you go say, hey, you want some help? And he goes, no, I'm not there yet. Right. Yeah. Well, what is there? Right. So the point being is that the rock bottom is when you stop digging. Okay. So when you want to make change, it's not only about stop digging, but it's also about raising your bottom. You can raise your bottom through awareness and education and understanding. Talk to the people that understand it. Talk to the people that get it. And as you're starting to learn and educate yourself on whatever it is that you're going through, how horrible it may be, it doesn't mean that you're going to switch in a second. But as you start lowering your tolerance through education, your bottom raises. Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't take as much for to just say, hey, you know what, I can do this. And to make change, the fear of change has to be less than the fear of staying the same, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so as soon as that exceeds it. So with knowledge, you can change the fear of change, and then you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you can just increase your awareness to make that happen. So the advice I give to anybody is to just keep learning. Stop thinking that you have to wait for this epiphany of the sky to open up, and just keep trying, start doing. And then like we said before, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be addiction if you didn't.
Oh my gosh.
right?
Powerful. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you have to fail. So there's going to be failures. There's going to be drops. There's going to be pick yourself up, dust off, try again and do it and do it and do it. And it's like anything. Eventually you'll get it right. But don't stop trying. Don't think that you got to wait for something or someone to pick you up and dust you off. Just start learning whatever it is you got to do.
Wow. I love that you said that. And I would say, I'm sure my husband would agree with me, but one of the most powerful things we learned was raising the bottom. That was probably one of the most powerful things we learned as a parent dealing with this, is that everybody's like, well, you either can help them to the bottom or you can raise the bottom. And by raising the bottom is just really facing consequences to choices, right? Just whatever that is and finding clarity in it, not through resentment or anger, but I would say raising the bottom is probably what helped all of us get onto a better path.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely a good lesson for us. So tell us a little bit about your missions now that you're doing. Do you work full time in addictions recovery? Yes.
So my own practice is deananderson.ca. You can visit me there, but I work one-on-one helping people in addiction recovery. I don't do too much with people in active addiction. I mean, I do people dealing with mild cases of marijuana or alcohol. But most of the people who are in the depths of opiate addiction or something, I usually refer them out to detox or some hospital systems. But the majority of people I'm dealing with are people that are in relapse prevention. So they've started the process of practicing abstinence, and I help take them to the next level of learning and understanding and becoming the best sober person that they can be. Showing them that there's more to it, right? And the funny thing is that as I'm driving home today, I was out and about doing some running around. As I'm driving home today, I started thinking about some of the people that I know that didn't have diversity or challenge in their lives, and the majority of them are spoiled brats. And they're going to probably hear this and be mad.
I know. It's okay.
You're a dick, right? But the one thing that I love to teach people, and that I work really hard to share with people on a regular basis, is that the diversity of your change makes you probably one of the most amazing people on the planet. And that it's through that change and that understanding. I don't know how many people in the middle of their life get an opportunity to control alt delete it and start all over again with new people, places, and things and mentalities and understanding, where they went wrong. We talk about failures and how they're learning. I mean, imagine, having half your life and saying, okay, that's something I'm just going to forget. I'm not forget, but learn from and move forward and start a brand new life in midlife. Why? Because I can. Well, I've got this excuse of addiction to say I had an addiction and now I'm changing and I'm making changes. Guess what? You get to change the direction of that bus right then and there. And then now you get the opportunity to have a new life. Who gets that, right? What a blessing. Let's talk about how we're going to make the best of it.
Oh, I love that you do this. I really, really do, because I do believe the whole relapse process and how you are approaching that is not talked about enough. It is not talked about enough. It's that initial, whatever. And I've even seen some 7-day, 14-day programs, and I'm like, really? It's not going to be. This is a lifelong issue, no different than some people I've dealt with food addictions. It's not something that they fix like this. It's not.
Most places do a 10-week relapse prevention program that has a 1-hour class once a week. That's the majority of it. And the thing that concerns me, and the reason why Webinars for Life came about, is you're taught. So say you're taught communication, or you're taught how to listen, or you're taught whatever it is, these skills that should be taught in school. Mark, can you write that down somewhere? Should be taught in schools.
I don't shoot. Yeah, schools and should not. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The point being is that these people are taught these life skills in 10 weeks, and their 10 weeks are usually within their first 3 months of sobriety. The first 3 months of sobriety, when you teach somebody something, one, it's probably not sinking in the way it should. Two, they're applying it to their life in their brain as you're teaching it to them, as it applies to their life at that moment in time. So if I apply listening skills to my life, I'm going to think about how I'm going to apply it to my angry wife at home who's yelling at me because I'm still trying to pay the bills because I screwed everything up while I was in addiction and blah, blah, blah. And I go home and I try it. It doesn't work. I say, screw you. And I walk out the door, right? That's it. I'm done with those listening skills. They don't work. But if I have, 6 months of sobriety, or a year of sobriety, or 2 years sobriety, guess what? Every single time that I learn that new skill or look at the idea of listening or assertive communication or boundary setting, I'm going to apply it to my life in a different way, shape, and form. And that's going to work and stick. And like any other skill, you don't go into a job and they say, hey, guess what? Here's your new job. And you go, okay. And you get taught once and you learn it and you're good, right?
Right.
So why would life skills be any different? Why would these things that are so paramount to us having a happy life be any different? I want to learn it 5 times. I want to do it. I want to practice it. I want a tutorial and I want a practicum. I want to learn this crap because it's relevant to my quality of life.
Yeah.
Let's say here's a 10-week thing and then take care. And 90% of these people end up right back in the same spot 6 months or a year later.
Wow. I love that. That's such a great way to look at it and to be able to address the processes that somebody goes through so that, you know what, you can set people up for success, really, as we call success, but setting them up for a much more likelihood of success.
Absolutely.
Yeah, long term. Well, people can reach you at deananderson.ca, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at webinarsforlife.com or .ca?
.com.
Okay.
Webinarsforlife.com it's a free online weekly relapse prevention. We do it Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings, and we cover a gambit of topics. We have a 16-week rotational cycle. They're live every week, and we talk about the issues that are at hand. And then we're working on some specialty ones, helping people with finance, smoking, additional secondary substances, anything we can think of that has relevancy to dealing with addiction. We're going to be doing sidebars as well. So if anybody's listening to this or is out there and is interested or knows somebody that's interested, visit webinarsforlife.com to sign up.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to have that in the information when we post it as well, Dean.
Awesome.
And I have 2 quick questions for you that I want to ask before we wrap up. What message would you go back and tell your younger self? Knowing what you know now, what simple message would you go back and tell your younger self?
Did you ever see Back to the Future?
Oh, yeah.
They say don't talk to him because you'll screw up the future.
Wow.
That's, you know what, I went through hell and I'm still going, I went through hell and I'm not going to lie about it. I went through some really tough stuff, in and out of hospitals and all those horrible things that happened to me. I'm still rebuilding my life. I'm still rebuilding relationships, still rebuilding finances, still trying to start my own career and going through all these struggles. But I'm going to have to honestly say that I got nothing to say to myself because he's got to learn it all on his own, that bugger.
Oh, so you know what you've done? You're demonstrating now how you're not living a life in regret.
I can't. And you know what? And I can't practice what I preach by saying I'm going to go back in time and tell myself something that would be different. I can't live that way. I have to stay in that moment and understanding that everything that's happened to me has happened for a reason. And it makes me the person that I am today. And like I said, it's our life experiences that give us the wisdom that make it so that I can help other people now, right? I wouldn't be if I went and gave back and gave myself advice, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you because I would give myself advice that would send me in a different direction.
Same here. And I actually love your answer because same here. I think that, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I mean, I have to appreciate the learning and the growth that happened to get to here. And I don't take it lightly. And that's why I feel called to step forward and try and do these, podcasts, these interviews, connect with people who have really walked some tough walks so that other people can see that they're not alone. But I can't look back on that resentment. Do I wish in some sense that I could have learned the lessons a different way? Yes.
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
I do.
Only when it's tough, you think that. Only when you're having a hard day, right? You start taking a personal inventory of your life, then you go, boy, I sure wish I could turn it back and not have to deal with this shit.
Yeah.
But then other times I'm just like, hey, you know what? Thank God. Thank God I'm where I am.
Sometimes I will sit there and say, okay, I know you want me to learn something, God, higher power, whatever you want to say, doesn't matter. I know you want me to learn something and I know I'm supposed to do something with this and I will figure it out. Or sometimes I look at it and go, wow, you're really piling it on today. Like, this is really, wow, this must be a growing day. That's what they say. It must be a growing day. Some days are growing days.
Totally.
Right? So
enough tests already.
I get it. It's like
at least make this one multiple choice, Dan.
Absolutely love that. Oh, and you probably answered it, but to summarize it, what lesson in life are you the most grateful for?
The gratitude and being in the moment. You know, I didn't understand the purpose of gratitude. I thought that, you know, being raised, that I had to always have this yearning for something in order to have drive. And I don't need a yearning for something to have drive. I don't need to say I'm missing something in my life to push towards something else. I just need to stay in the moment and focus on what I want to do right now because it's the right thing to do, and be grateful for what I have. Be grateful and be happy and content in the moment, and not live on that cognitive horizon that we talked about earlier when we're looking for the future. And that's what it is now. You know, when I came to the realization that, you know, depression lives in the past and anxiety lives in the future.
I love that
It was
quote.
like, wow. Right?
I love that quote. That's a Rumi quote for anybody who knows. That's one of my favorite quotes.
And I came to the realization before I ever read that quote. I came to that realization through life and through experiences. And when I thought down one day and that came to me, I thought, holy, wow, that's really powerful. On my own cognition, I thought that. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And then I read the quote and went, okay, hey, you're cheating, Rumi. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Where'd you get that? Quit reading my mind. Get out of my head.
Exactly. That's awesome.
But yeah, so I mean, that's it. I mean, it's, you know, anything can change in any moment. There's an infinite number of realities that can happen from second to second. Whether I turn left or right or go forward, I don't know. If the sun comes up tomorrow, I don't have any control over that, and I'm okay with that, knowing that I don't have it. And that is a huge burden off my chest, because in the past I always wanted to feel like I had control over everything around me, and I don't really.
Of anything. Like,
yeah, so being grateful. Pardon?
You don't have any control of anything other than yourself and what you choose to do.
Yeah.
No other control.
Yeah. So with that, mindfulness and gratitude, that's the best thing I've ever picked up.
That's powerful, and I love it. Thank you. I would say gratitude, I would honestly, has been a major game changer for me. And I think that some of the biggest growth that we have is when we can find gratitude when it's the worst.
And that's when you have to find it.
Absolutely.
That's when you need to practice having. There's no use in trying to take a personal inventory of your life when you're at your worst, because you're doing yourself a disfavor. When you're feeling crappy, look for gratitudes. When you're feeling happy, that's the time to evaluate your life and figure out what it is that you want to do to make change, right?
Yeah, exactly. I cannot agree with you more. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And I will have all the information available when we post it, and I'll keep you posted when that is. But if you'd like to reach out to Dean, it's deananderson.ca. And I'll tell you, as a person who's walked some of the paths that you have spoken of, I have no doubt in full faith you are phenomenal at what you do with the families and with the people themselves. So thank you so much for stepping into that role, because you're making a difference in people's lives, and it's so needed. So I thank you so much for doing that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining on this episode of Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. And stay tuned next time. We will connect again with another speaker, another tip, another story of how somebody has gone forward in their life to own their choices and ultimately change their life. Thank you so much, and have an amazing day.